Okay, so I want to start off by saying just three quick things before we start. First of all, I'm going to try to be as spoiler free about this topic as I possibly can. I know the show just came out not too long ago, so a lot of people aren't totally caught up or finished or whatever. They might be worried about spoilers. I'm going to try to be super unspecific with what I say in the beginning. Halfway through, I'm going to give spoilers, but I will give a warning. So if you're worried about that, you'll know very clearly when to click off and when to go somewhere else and come back after you watch the show. Second of all, I want to say that what did I want to say? Second of all, I want to say that this video is going to be very, very different than most things I put out. This is just going to be a discussion between me and between you. Whoever watches this, just so I can get my thoughts out there, get my rants out there, get my praises out there, any sort of feelings I have about this show that I care way too much about, I want to put out there. And thirdly, like I said, I care way too much about this show. I want to make that known. I grew up on Avatar. I'll admit, I'm 20 years old, born in '03. I was the age range where I didn't necessarily watch it all as it came out, but I very vividly remember watching the season 3 finale, the very last episode of the show, at my aunt's house, and thinking it was this coolest thing on the face of the planet. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say that I've probably rewatched this show at least 100 times. It's my favorite show, hands down. I don't give that out lightly. I have a couple shows where I'm like, that's a banger, that's a banger, that's a banger. And what's number one? Avatar The Last Airbender, as you know, because that's what the name of this video will be called. So, with that being said, let's get into it. The spoiler-free section. Now, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this. I know a lot of you guys probably disagree. I know everyone on the internet has been disagreeing. But let me just start by saying, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't terrible, all things considered. I mean, yeah, did they take a lot of artistic liberties and change a lot of things from the original? Yeah, absolutely. But was all of it bad? I wouldn't say so. I think there was a couple moments where they made a choice and they changed things, and I was like, at first while watching it, I was like, oh, that's very different, that's interesting. But then as I watched more, I was like, okay, it didn't necessarily need to be changed, but it also didn't really take away from anything or hurt anything. And there was a couple times, to be honest, where I thought it actually added. I thought it actually made kind of a good difference in a way of character backstories or character development, where I was like, wow, that's actually a really cool detail that if the original show added, I think it would have been even better. Now, with that being said, there was also plenty of things where I was like, what the fuck are you doing? That was not only just a choice, but it was a bad choice. It was a very bad choice. And I think the biggest one with this is the way they changed the characters. So for those of you who have been following this for a while, you might know that about a month ago, the director came out and he did an interview, and he claimed two drastically scary things. One, that Aang, the main character, whose whole thing is that he is the Avatar and he doesn't want to be the Avatar and he just wants to be a normal kid who gets to go and have fun and travel the world. That's what he wants, but he's forced into this position of saving the world that he never asked for. That's the whole point of the character. So about a month ago, or whenever it was, I'm not quite sure how long ago it was, but the director came out and did an interview, and he was like, you know the Aang that you love? You know the Aang that you love, and like the whole thing about him, and like his whole entire main one character trait? Fuck that. We're getting rid of it. What do we need? We need a Game of Thrones audience. We need him to be serious. We need him to get rid of the ball busting. He needs to go in there. He needs to kick some ass, and he needs to be the hero, the one who is so focused on being the Avatar. And that was the dumbest thing they could have possibly done. I mean, bro, the entire point of his character. Oh my god, I'm getting upset. I'm getting upset. The entire point of his character is that over the 3 seasons, or the 3 books, if you will, he's supposed to develop into the Avatar. He's supposed to start as a 12-year-old kid. 12-year-old kid who just wants to be a kid, who wants to go have fun, who wants to go swimming with the giant fucking fish that I forget the name of, or surf on them, or he wants to go play airball at the air temple. There's so many things that he does, so many side adventures that makes him Aang, that makes him the character that we all love, and that grows into the hero. And they threw it in the trash. They said, let's make him the hero from the start. Why? I don't fucking know. Because they claim they want the Game of Thrones audience. Bro, nobody else wants the Game of Thrones. It's a kid show, bro. It's a kid show. It gets me so mad. And then, did they stop there? No. They said that they were going to change Sokka, the other lighthearted, goofy character. They said, well, for some context, Sokka, if you haven't seen the original show, starts off the show as a hard-ass leader who's determined to protect his village and get what needs to be done. That's his thing. Now he's a little goofy, he makes some mistakes, he falls down things, like it happens, but that is his core character. With that, he believes that men are supposed to be the caretakers, the providers, the protectors, and that women are simply supposed to be the mother of the household, the healers. They're supposed to stand on the sidelines as the men protect their home. Is that right? No. But that's the point. The whole point is that Sokka goes on his journey being sexist, not believing in women, believing that he has to be the one to save everyone. Then he finds Kyoshi Island throughout the show. They go to Kyoshi Island, and he meets the Kyoshi warriors, specifically Suki, who becomes his love interest throughout the show. Now, what's so special about Suki? Suki's not a bender. Suki simply is just a warrior. She's a fighter, and she kicks Sokka's ass. That's the point. A woman who's a fighter takes Sokka and shows him the error of his ways. And does it work immediately? Not necessarily. But over the course of the show, Suki time and time again teaches Sokka how to be a better person. So, what did the director say in that interview where they completely changed Aang? They're completely changing Sokka. He doesn't need to be sexist. Sexism is bad. Sexism is holding the character back. Is sexism bad? Absolutely. Great statement. But at the end of the day, the whole point of him is to show that sexism is bad. To show that women can be just as strong as men. That's literally the entire messaging. And now you're getting rid of that because you want what? All your characters to be perfect? You want none of your characters to develop and become better people as you go? A good show has flawed characters. That's the entire idea around it. And you just go and you do this, and now not only is Sokka not going to grow because he has nowhere to grow to, he's already perfect, but now Suki, who's an amazing character, holds no purpose, at least in season 1. Her whole purpose in season 1 was to show Sokka the error of his ways, and now that's just not there. It's completely gone, and they tried to somewhat keep that dynamic. I will admit they did, but it just didn't work. It just didn't work. Without Sokka's blatant, obvious flaws, there was nothing for him to realize was wrong and correct. And it sucked. I'm gonna be honest. It sucks. Now, I will say, they didn't completely get rid of specifically Aang. There was moments, especially in the beginning, where Aang did show some childlike behavior. He would see other kids, he would go have fun with the other kids. He was upset when he found out he was the Avatar. Like these moments did happen, but they didn't happen nearly as much, and they were well outweighed by the idea of Aang needs to do what he needs to do to save the world. It was way, way, way too aggressive on that side. Now, you might be thinking, "Oh, but there's other ways the characters can grow. There's other flaws that they probably have." No. Not one. Not one. All the characters are perfect. They didn't change at all from episode 1 to episode 8 all the way through. They didn't grow, they didn't change, they didn't nothing. They're all exactly the same. Not to mention that none of them even got better at what they do. Nobody got better. Aang did not get better at bending all throughout season 1. Sokka did not get better at fighting all through season 1. Katara is the only one who showed any sort of progress, and let me tell you, it was bullshit. You would see her one moment struggling. Sorry, we're kind of sort of getting into spoilers, but we're not completely in spoilers yet, so keep watching. I'm not giving a huge spoiler yet, but you'd see moments where there would be one scene where Katara's really struggling with water bending, as she's supposed to in season 1. Really struggling, can't figure it out. She has her scroll, she's trying to learn. And then the very next scene, she's using these insane fucking water bending techniques that I'm like, when did you learn that? You were just struggling with that 3 seconds ago. What do you mean you know that? And it's lame. Not to mention that, in my opinion, the character who seems the most personality, I guess you'd say, change was Katara, who they didn't mention Katara at all in the interview, yet she was the most drastically changed. The whole thing they did with Katara in the live action was she was just always optimistic. She was never upset. She was always like, we're going to do this. She was the one there to be like, oh my God, guys, I support you. You're going to get it done. There was nothing about her that seemed to be the protector almost that she had become in the original animated series, which really sucks to see, because that's the three main characters, and all of them were different. Now, again, I know I started this off by saying it wasn't that bad, and that's because it wasn't. If you take into consideration the 2014 movie, that shit was ass. That was really bad. Like, that literally was like a dog walked out, took a shit on the floor, another dog came, licked it for a second, took another shit on top, and then an elephant came and took the biggest shit of all on it. That is what the movie was. I'm actually convinced that not a single person in the 2014 movie had ever seen a single episode of the show or really even knew the concept. This new Netflix show, I don't feel that way. There was a lot of moments where I was like, that was a really cool reference to the show. And not only was it just like, oh, they went on Reddit and saw something. Like, you actually had to be a fan of the show to get that reference or to get that little detail picked up, which was cool, and I give them credit for. I do think they cared and they tried. So on that aspect, I don't think it was all that bad. I do give them credit for that. On to the juicy shit. Let me start off by pointing out my biggest problem with all of season 1. The entire basis of book 1 is Aang and Katara learning to bend water. Not once throughout the entire season does Aang even kind of bend water. Not once. He doesn't pick up a bubble. He doesn't do a whiplash. He doesn't even sit in water. Not once. You don't see it. They find a master. They go all the way to the Northern Water Tribe so that he can learn bending, and he doesn't do it. It's like, oh my God. What was the point? What was the point of you finding the waterbending scroll? What was the point of Katara learning to waterbend because she was supposed to teach you waterbending? What was the point of finding Master Paku, who is like supposed to be one of the greatest waterbenders in the world? You didn't do it once! The moment in the original show, at the very end, he goes into the Avatar state, he channels the ocean spirit, and he does this crazy water bending. He turns into a giant fucking fish. That's the whole point. It's supposed to be the climax of the show, of season 1. It's really cool. And what did they do in this one? They discredit him for it. He still does it, but in this version, they're like, oh, it's not him. Aang's dead, actually. It was the ocean spirit taking over his body. So it's not actually Aang doing the waterbending. Bro, that was the dumbest decision. Like, that's what I was talking about earlier by, like, they make decisions, and, like, some of them work, and some of them I'm just like, what are you doing? Now, since I gave my biggest issue, let's give my biggest compliment on something they changed, or more so didn't change but added. Zuko's entire character arc is he's the prince of the Fire Nation. He speaks up against a battle strategy because the battle strategy is going to kill people, and he says it's a bad idea. The Ozai, the Fire Lord, gets mad at him. He challenges him to an Agni Kai, which is basically just a 1v1, and he kicks his ass and banishes him until he can find the Avatar. That is the case in both the original and the new Netflix show, which was good. They held true. They stayed true to the original story in a way that I really liked. Something they added, which was just a small detail, but I think added a lot to it, was the idea that the crew that Zuko takes to go find the Avatar is the crew in which he saved when he spoke up against like the battle plans like earlier that got him banished. So they originally want to send in, I want to say it's the 41st Battalion to fight Omashu, and he's like, no, that's a bad idea. They're gonna die. He does the Agni Kai. He gets banished, and Ozai says, since you care so much, you take the 41st Battalion and you go and find the Avatar. That wasn't in the original show as far as I can remember, just that little detail. And I don't think it made like all the difference, but it was cool. Because once they found out, due to Uncle Iroh telling them, they all just had this immaculate respect for Zuko, which again wasn't needed. It didn't need to happen in the show, but it just added a little detail that I actually really liked. Another thing they added was Monk Gyatso. Monk Gyatso was the monk that essentially raised Aang. He didn't necessarily have parents, but if you were to say like the closest thing to a parent Aang ever had, it would be Monk Gyatso. He died 100 years earlier when the Fire Nation attacked. Aang finds his body. He goes into the Avatar state. That's cool. Then something they added is when Aang goes to the spirit world for the first time, he finds Monk Gyatso, which was not in the original. And it didn't need to happen, but it made sense. I mean, Monk Gyatso, airbenders as a whole were known to be very spiritual people. If you watch Legend of Korra, you find out that goes even deeper with like astral projection and things like that. So it wouldn't necessarily shock me to know that Monk Gyatso spent his whole life training to the point where he can now spend his afterlife in the spirit world rather than just dying, much like Uncle Iroh did in The Legend of Korra. And that was just a cool little thing. Again, it didn't need to happen, but I was okay with the fact that it did happen. An overall complaint I have, again, since we just gave the show some praise, let's go back and shit on it a little more, is they tried to cram as many moments in an episode as they possibly could. The episode when they are in Omashu, they tried to fit like 6 episodes into that episode. They run into the Machinist, who the Machinist in the original show they find at the Northern Air Temple if I remember correctly. Him and Sokka create the hot air balloon. You find out the machinist is actually, for the safety of his kid, is working with the Fire Nation, and then he regrets it, and he fucking helps them take the Fire Nation down later. It's a whole thing. In this one, they just wanted to shove that in without spending a whole episode on the Northern Air Temple. So instead, they just put him in Omashu. For no reason. The next episode, they also added the secret tunnel people at the complete wrong moment in time. And it's like, okay. Like, I get you're trying to, like, service to the fans. Everyone loves Secret Tunnel. Everyone knows Secret Tunnel. But it's like, this is not the right moment for Secret Tunnel. Aang wasn't even there. The entire Secret Tunnel episode originally is the first moment where you see that Aang and Katara kind of have a thing for each other. And I get that, like, now they're doing it with, like, actual kids. So, like, it might be a little weird and dicey if you try to do that. But Aang wasn't even there for this. So they just scrapped that idea and replaced it with Sokka. Like, oh, sibling love, brother and sisterly love. They love each other. That's how they got through the tunnel. And it's like, all right, okay, like, I guess. But that's like a pretty crucial character development moment that you're just getting rid of because either A, you're worried to do it with kids, which I can understand, but I don't know, it just feels weird, or B, they're trying to shove way too much into an episode at once. There's also some complaints I have about the past avatars. Like, Kyoshi was fine. Kyoshi, they did good, but I think Kyoshi's the easiest one to do good, if I'm being honest. Kyoshi's just like an angry, tall woman who's like, oh, the Avatar's duty is to protect the world no matter what. This is a burden you have to bear on your own. Which was fine. They did her fine. But then you get to Roku, and Roku is just so meh. Like, Roku had nothing going for him. Roku was just like, hey, Aang, you gotta do this on your own, man. And, go save your friends from the spirit world. That was it. He offered no real guidance, which was kind of lame. And then you get to Kuruk, who Aang is supposed to barely even speak with, but they made him like a big deal in the Northern Water Tribe for some reason. And he was a fucking grumpy ass old man, which made no sense. Like, he was just angry all the time. And speaking of grumpy ass old men, Boomy, King Boomy, one of the greatest characters in all of Avatar. He's a member of the White Lotus, king of Omashu. In the original show, he puts Aang, Sokka, and Katara through a series of tests to prove that Aang is actually Aang, his friend from 100 years ago when he was a kid. Which they kind of just butchered him. Like, I know he was like acting like a grumpy old man in the original series, and then you find out it's Boomy, and he's he's a goofy guy. He's great, he's funny, he's insanely powerful. But in this version, he's just a grumpy old man. He finds out that it's Aang, and he introduces himself as Boomy within the first, like, 3 seconds of them meeting, which is stupid. And then all the trials that he puts him through is basically just being like, yo, Aang, you're not going to do this. The world of being the Avatar is actually way harder than you think it is, so just give up now. And then Aang proves himself through all these missions, and he's still like, yo, Aang, like, you're not going to do this. We're fucked. The world's over. Which was dumb. And he remained a grumpy old man. Like, don't get me wrong. By the end of it, he was like at the very end, he was like, oh, Aang, like, you gave me hope. Go ahead. We're going to defend against the Fire Nation. But, like, that was for, like, 3 seconds. Like, it felt like they didn't have the heart of these characters. Overall, I guess that is my complaint. They took the story and did the story very well. They did it better than the original movie. But when it came to the characters that everyone learned to know and love, they just didn't do them justice. They didn't take what truly made those characters and put them on the screen. They just wanted the characters to be perfect people. They wanted them to be static characters where the moment you meet them, you know exactly what you're going to get. And it didn't work. It didn't work in the way that they wanted it to. I wasn't as disappointed as I expected to be. I went into this with really, really low hopes, thinking it was just going to be god-awful. And admittedly, it wasn't. But it just still wasn't what I was hoping for. If they just listened to the writers 2 years ago before they left for creative differences, it could have worked out. And I still have hope that maybe season 2, season 3, they'll hear the fan criticism and they'll fix these things. It's just like a lot of these things were crucial in starting a very specific way with how characters were and their flaws, and they kind of ruined it already. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they could do better in the future. Maybe it's just going to be all downhill. Maybe they won't even continue it going. But one thing I'm very excited for is definitely Avatar Studios. They're making the Kyoshi movie or show. I think it's a movie. They're making the Gang show as adults. They're making the next Avatar after Korra. And I'm very excited for these things. And I hope they go well. It's just, man, Netflix, you've been working on this shit for like 5 years now, getting us hype. And you let us down, man. You let us down. It's the best way I could put it. So, yeah, to give this an overall ranking and how I feel, I'm going to be honest. I think a 10 out of 10 is very hard to achieve for most things. There's very few shows I would give a 10 out of 10, or movies or media in general. I look at 5 as perfectly mid. It is average. There's nothing crazy about it. And I look at 1 as like absolute dookie garbage. I'll never watch it again. And this show, I'm gonna be honest, I'd give it like a 5. It's mid. It is mid. No characters grow. There's doesn't feel like there's any crazy stakes at hand. They didn't do anything truly different in the world of cinema and TV. It was mid. They played it safe in every way you possibly could. Half the changes they made, no, most of the changes they made were bad decisions. There was a few good ones, but not enough to outweigh it. Visually, it looked great. It did. So that's why I think I'm giving it a 5 and not lower, is because it did look good. I wasn't hating myself while watching it. I didn't regret my time I spent while watching it, but it's like, it was mid. I really don't know how to put it any better. So, yeah, if you agree with me, great. Make sure to drop a like. Please subscribe. I recently found out that you can't make any money on YouTube unless you reach 1,000 subscribers, which sucks. And I'm kind of trying to get this to like a full-time thing one day maybe. So please subscribe. Please, 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 please subscribe. The last video I put out, 99% of viewers were unsubscribed. 99%. Please. It's free. It's free. Just scroll down, hit the subscribe button to make it gray. That's all I'm asking. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you disagreed with me, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. Let me know in the comments what you disagree with, what you liked more. Maybe you thought it was worse than the way I looked at it. I don't know, but feel free to let me know. I'm really curious to see how you guys feel about this show. And thanks for watching. Yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.